Okay, let's have a word of prayer. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, we just love you and thank you for giving us a beautiful world that we can learn about you with and enjoy. And just pray that you would guide us in our understanding. Give us your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, so today we are going to talk about water. So here's some of the things that plants need in order to grow. And last class we talked about the sun and all the benefits of the sun and how we can position our garden and where it can get enough sun. And now we're going to be talking about water here. So it's required. Here's a list. Basically, this is a list of some of the benefits of water and the things that plants use water for. So the first would be requiring for seeds to sprout, and then carries nutrients throughout the plant. It also is needed for the photosynthesis process, which is what plants use the sunlight and combine that with carbon dioxide and water in order to produce the sugar it needs. So that's required in that process. Also, evaporation on the leaves cools the plant. So that's part of the normal process is for the plant to give off water through its leaves. It also allows mineral absorption through the leaves. So required to germinate here. So plant seeds are encased within an outer shell of varying thicknesses. So almost all seeds have what we call a shell around them, like a skin that protects the seed. And when that absorbs water, the water gets into the seed and it starts a biochemical reaction to allow that seed to germinate. Also protects the seed, as I mentioned. Water is absorbed, activating it. And also God is there as well, providing the spark of life to allow it to grow. So here's some types of seed germination. Different seeds behave just a little differently. Here's two of the major types. This is a bean over here on the left, and this is a pea. So on the left here, let's see, I think I even have I got a little reflection here if it doesn't bounce off in someone's eye now. So you can see here's the seed, and this gives you a little idea when you plant bean seeds, what position do you put the little eye down? Do you put it up? Do you put it on the side? So as you see how the the seed is starting to germinate there, there's what we call a radicle, and that'll form the root process, the root of it. And then we have it getting larger, and then it's starting to push up. So in the bean seed, it's going ahead and pushing the whole top of the seed out of the ground rather than leaving the seed in the ground. As you'll see here in the pea, it leaves the seed in the ground right at where you planted it and produces a little stem going up and leaves and a root going down. So that's a little different. So you'll notice on bean seeds, you'll see the actual seed come up out of the soil, and then leaves will first come out of that seed, poking up. And then for this, you can see it's got a little different process there. So it's got, like I mentioned, it comes up, goes two directions. Here is a corn seed up here. Some of the parts of it there. The endosperm, the common thing that we see like in white flour, you would think the white flour part would be the endosperm of the wheat. And then the germ would be the part that has all the oils and the germination stuff in there, generally where most of the nutrition is. So that's why white flour is so nutritionally void, because all the good minerals and the vitamins are kept in the oils and the part of the germination part. But that goes rancid, so they remove it for long-term storage, because if you put a box of crackers that has the whole grain in there, it'll go rancid within maybe 3 weeks or so, and then they'll have to discard it. So then they don't want to do that, so they remove that important part for us, but not very good for economical purposes or manufacturing. So then, like I mentioned, it has a seed coat around it. We got the radicle going down, the hypercotyl up. It's the part that kind of germinates. That's this little part here where the leaves come out. And then, so this is I mentioned this is a corn plant here. So you'll see it looks like a grass. Grasses do this similar thing. So then different parts there, first leaves. And then this is a bean plant, so very similar process. Just kind of like we saw in the last part there, but you can see this is where all the good stuff happens right there, that little eye part, or on a corn up here near the tip. And here is some baby pictures. So I thought it'd be, when you first plant out your garden and you're starting out, a lot of times you see things coming up, you don't know if it's a weed or a plant or what it is, or you lose track of it in your trays, something gets mislabeled. It's good to have a visual recognition, a little practice of saying, oh, I know what that is. I recognize the leaf pattern on there. So I thought we'd take a look at some little plant pictures and see if we can identify what type of plant it is. So does anyone have any ideas on this one?
Bean.
Yep. So we can see there's got the bean part of the seed there sticking up out of theirs. Those will finally fall off as it uses up all the energy in them in the growing of the plant. Okay, what about these?
Tomato.
Very good.
Wow.
And what about those?
Isn't that cilantro?
No, not cilantro. These are all fairly common ones. This would be a little more of a challenge.
Pepper?
Yes, pepper.
Oh, very good.
So they're going to have very smooth little leaves, and very oval, and kind of shiny usually. Pepper leaves tend to be a lot more shiny than like tomato leaves. All right, what about this one? Now this could be a whole range of plants.
Radish.
That is part of the family. Does anyone know what the family's called? Starts with a B.
Oh, a B.
Called Brassica. Brassica family. So this would be broccoli, and for the example, but it looks identical to kale, cabbage, any of those in that type of family. So they have this little kind of heart shape. They all have these two little hearts opposing each other. So when you see that, you can say, "Oh, I know what that is. It's from one of the Brassica family." Of course, you try and it could be any of them, so you don't know exactly because they all look about the same. Okay, what about this one?
Or a melon. Or a cucumber.
So this would be the cucurbit family. So these are cucumbers, to be very specific on that. But squash look very similar, so you have to, I think they're in the same family, but they don't tend to cross. Okay, what about that one?
Is it corn?
Yep, that's
Oh,
corn. So kind of like a grass, but it's,
magnified pictures?
yeah, larger than
That would
life.
be pretty big.
Okay, what about that one?
That's squash.
There's the squash, yep. What about that one?
Primrose. Just kidding.
There's no flowers. These are all edible.
Oh.
Potatoes. Yep, potatoes. So they're all kind of bunchy all together, and they're usually hairy leaves. All right, enough of that here. Okay, so carries nutrients throughout the plant. This is another job that water does. So we have two parts of the plant called a xylem and a phloem. They are the main tissues responsible for this movement of water, or water is used in that process. Water coming up from the roots mixed with minerals, it goes up, and then the phloem is used for sending sugars throughout the plant to all the parts that need it for growth. just mentioned that, so that's kind of what that is. So here's a picture of some of those structures. We have the xylem here, so this is a one-way path going up from the roots. So that would be the red here, water and minerals, and then it goes up into the leaves, and then it usually, part of it's used for the photosynthesis process. It also evaporates too, using transpiration process. And then the phloem over here. So these structures, notice that this one has, it's hollow, kind of like a hollow straw, where this has got all these little cell structures. Yeah, basically there's little caps on the end of each one, but they have little holes in them. And it's a two-way flow, water and food, end walls with perforations. So the end walls is what these are called here. And here's a magnified view of that. So, so we have green and yellow. Can anyone identify the two different structures based off of what we just saw? Which one would be the phloem and which one would be the xylem?
Phloem is the yellow.
Yep.
And xylem, the green.
Well, hold on here. Nope, you're wrong.
Good feeling though.
So the phloem would be the, I tricked you. See, there's
Yeah,
different,
yeah.
the they're not color coordinated.
Color.
I didn't do that on purpose. So you can tell, look at the little holes in here.
Mm.
So that tells us it's the phloem. So that's where the sugars go through. And then the water and the minerals will be coming up through this structure here, since you see there's kind of just empty tubes.
So what is that a cross section of?
A stem of a plant.
Of what plant, do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's
I was
just,
just
it was an
curious if
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so then it's also needed for the photosynthesis process. So during photosynthesis, plants take on carbon dioxide and water from the air and the soil. Within the plant cell, the water is oxidized, meaning it loses electrons, while the carbon dioxide is reduced. So those are two terms that are good to understand. Oxidized and reduced. Generally, oxidized means it has oxygen, so you can say oxidation on metal, you could see as rust. So it's kind of a rusting process. And then reducing would be the process where you stick a rusty piece of metal into some vinegar. So it's an acid, and it reduces it, removes the oxygen from that. So it's kind of like the two extremes. pH is similar, but it's not directly related. Sometimes they correlate, like reduced is generally more acidic, but it doesn't have to be, and they're not the same thing. So one has to do with the amount of oxygen. So if you fluff up your soil, it will oxidate it. And if you pack it down and put a lot of water in there to drive out all the air, then it will be reduced. Generally, reduced soils are less prone to fungal infections and bacterial infections, and diseases in general are less in a reduced soil. So the more you fluff up your soil, the more likely your diseases will happen. Let's see here. Again,
So you shouldn't rototill.
generally you want to disturb the soil as little as possible, and that tends to create a good environment for plants to thrive and not to have disease problems. And also the tilling tends to encourage all the bacteria to have a party and just eat up all the food that's available there and all at once, and rather than having a slow release of nutrients over the growing season. All right, so then it creates turns carbon dioxide into glucose along with the water. So the water and the carbon dioxide, and then the sun allows that process to happen, kind of like the energy source to make the chemical reaction. So plants release oxygen back into the air which you probably knew already. That's why plants give off oxygen and animals give off carbon dioxide. And stores energy within the glucose molecules. So basically just sugar, glucose. Okay, here's a just overview of photosynthesis process. Light coming in, gets oxygen, or oxygen released. We get carbon dioxide coming into the bottom of the leaves through the stomata, which are little mouths in the bottom of the leaf. And then that process creates sugars. And then water going up, so it's a little bit out of order. So let's do that again. Water goes up, carbon dioxide goes in, sunlight makes the operation happen, and we get sugar and oxygen out. Okay, and then transpiration from the leaves cools the plant. So that's an important mechanism that the plant has. When it's super hot out, let's say over 95 degrees, it really is pumping the water up from the roots as fast as it can and then transpiring it. Any idea how that would be helpful to the plant to cool it?
So it doesn't burn.
Yeah, but what would be the process of when it evaporates the water, what happens to the plant?
Shrivels.
No, not necessarily.
Decreases the temperature, right?
Yeah, but why would it decrease the temperature?
I guess I'm with the overheating and burning.
Okay, so it's the evaporation process. And in fact, if you take like a wet cloth and you put it over your neck or something like that, when it starts evaporating, it has a cooling effect because it's the way heat is removed from the system basically with the water. I'm not probably explaining it very well, but anyway, it's kind of like when we sweat. Why people sweat? When your skin gets moist, it evaporates, it has a cooling effect on us too. So that's why plants do that. So H2O, whoops. So we got H2O here. So these picture of the underside of the leaf. So it comes out from the bottom of the leaf. These are the stomata. There's the spelling of it, S-T-O-M-A-T-A. And you'll hear that a lot since that's an important component of the plant there. So the water comes out and that cools the plant there. And there's another picture of it. So now the process of transpiring the water, evaporating it off the plant, that causes a suction effect to happen with the entire plant. And the place where it then is released, it pulls from the top, it's going to come up from the roots. So that allows the plant to pull water up from the roots by this. It's kind of like a capillary action where one little, like a drop of water on a table, it just kind of like moves. It continues the stream. You'll notice that it doesn't just separate off and little beads go everywhere, scatter. They all kind of like stick together. And so one molecule of water pulls the others around. And so we're basically pulling molecules of water up from the soil, just like it kind of like pulls it around. So anyway, that's something to think about. So if it didn't give it off, it wouldn't be able to receive it. And so we can think of the spiritual application as well of water being a symbol for, anyone know?
Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, and that can also be salvation. So as we give salvation to others, we get more of it ourselves. We can pull it in. As we give, God gives us more. So that's kind of the lesson that God wants to teach us through the water transpiring and sucking in more water.
Wow.
And this is what the leaf looks like, some of the parts of the leaf. So allows mineral absorption through the leaves. So this will be the top part of the leaf here. So when water that has dissolved minerals in it lands on the top of the leaf or even on the bottom, there's a way for that plant to pull all those minerals in to itself and make use of those minerals. So it doesn't just have to get it from the roots. But it was interesting that the water, you would think that it would suck the water in with the minerals and then separate them out and use them, but it actually doesn't pull the water in. So you can't actually water your plant by spraying it. It doesn't actually go into the plant. It'll evaporate and leave the minerals. And if it evaporates too quickly before the plant is able to get the minerals in, then those minerals just stay there until they get water on them again.
Is that
So-
the bottom too? It doesn't go through those tomato?
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't
Oh, okay.
pull in minerals, at least as far as I understand.
Water the ground. Gotcha.
So that's something to think about here. So in order for, and we can use that
How does that
property.
work with, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay.
The foliage spray? That you said that there was
Yeah.
a foliage spray.
Right,
So I guess I was confused on the, so it's just the minerals that it takes and not the water?
correct.
Okay.
So when we foliar spray, we're trying to feed the plant through the leaves and get minerals in that it isn't getting through the soil. And when we have deficiencies in our soil or it isn't working well, it may be there, but in a form the plant can't get access to. There's different forms of minerals. And if it isn't in the correct form, the plant can't make use of it. Or if it isn't mainly water solubility, if it can't be put into a solution, then the plant can't take it up. So that's an important thing. So biology is there to transform it into a form that the plants can make use of. But we can also give the plant the minerals it needs in the form that it needs.
So if you have compost tea, would it be beneficial to put it on the leaves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of biology that's on the surface of the leaf that is beneficial to the plant. Just like on our skin, there's a lot of biology there. And so that biology can, if it's beneficial to the plant, it can fight off those that are harmful to the plant. Some like a spore of Phytophthora or something like that, which is a fungal disease. When that lands on the plant, the other bacteria that are there on the leaf can help to fend that off and kill it off. They kind of attack it. And then they also secrete different acids generally that can eat away at the surface and then get the infection into the leaf. And so a healthy plant is able to fend that off if it has the right, just like our immune system. If we have all the minerals that we need in our body, then it can help to fend off disease and sickness. So it's basically more of a sickness than a disease. Well, I guess it could be both too, because disease is generally a deficiency in some mineral that we have, causes an imbalance in our bodies, and things start happening that we don't appreciate. Aches and pains and other body just not being able to regulate itself correctly. So the plant is the same way. When it's sick, it doesn't have all the minerals it needs. Disease can come on the leaves very easily. And we see that like powdery mildew is one that we see usually on squash plants a lot. So that means it's getting weak and tired. It doesn't have all the minerals it needs. And it's the powdery mildew is able to get on there and get into the leaf itself and start an infection. And here's a up-close picture of the stomata. These little mouths here look like little seeds there, but they kind of open and close, letting water out and minerals in. Also, so those stomata are also what allows the carbon dioxide from the air to go into the plant. So that's the mechanism it uses to get that in there. So then some watering methods. So if you start your plants in trays at all, there's a couple different ways to do that. One would be called bottom watering. So you'd use a tray without holes. You can, when you go to buy one of these plastic trays, they come in two different forms, one with little holes in them and one without. And so if you're going to do bottom watering, you need them without holes. So that and then generally you fill it up to be about half from the base all the way up to the top, about half. And that will soak, then capillary action, it'll soak up that water into the soil all the way up to the top. if you have enough water. If it isn't getting to the top, then you need to add a little bit more water, but it'll get all the way up there to the top. And the benefit of that is that it doesn't disturb the position of the seed. If you get water over the top, it can splash and push the seed around. It may be off to the side or bury it or get it way up the top and kind of expose it. So that's one way. It can be a very gentle way to get the soil wet after you put it into your trays there.
What is this called?
Bottom watering?
Bottom water.
Yeah.
Is there certain kind of seeds that do better with that type rather than disturbing the seed like you were saying from watering above? Is there-
The bigger the seed, the less of a problem it is.
Okay.
So you could, if it's like beans or corn or something like that, then it's less of an issue because it's a big seed and doesn't tend to go anywhere. But the little tiny seeds, those are the ones where you want to put, do bottom watering. And generally, you just pick one method and say, oh, that works for all of them, and just kind of do them all the same. If they take a lot of water, sometimes the bigger seeds will take a lot of water, and so it's sometimes convenient to just go out there and sprinkle, do a shower over the top. And so this would be an example of top watering. And so you have your seed trays there, and they're just going over there with a water breaker and a watering wand. Let's see here, I have my thing in here somewhere. Get my props out here.
And
Okay.
if you have powdery mildew on your squash, what's it like?
That I don't remember. There probably is something. I would have to look that up. It could be multiple things.
Yeah, what kind of minerals? You said minerals.
Yeah,
So what kind of minerals? Do you have any idea?
any of that are available. Generally, the non-radioactive ones. So we got the periodic table of around 90 some odd minerals, and all those are generally beneficial to the plant in some way. It's said there's usually about 17 that they know, exactly what they do, but there's more and more that they find all the time. I think they're up to maybe 30 or 40 different ones that they know that, hey, the plant uses this for some process it has. And same thing in the body, for us, hey, they're discovering new minerals and what it does in the body. And aluminum is needed in the body, just in a small quantity, and arsenic and things like that.
Okay. I heard of.
So anyway, this would be an example of a watering wand if you haven't seen one before. This is very useful for breaking up the water, so you're not just taking a hose and kind of squirting it or something like that. Or also the kind that you squeeze and they have a little head and you turn it, and usually it's forcing the water out pretty heavily. So this slows it down and makes it more of a gentle rain over the top. So this is helpful for doing top watering. So that's kind of what that looks like there. And then some different controls here. So this is a Dram one if you want a high quality one. Dram makes some really good quality products. So this one it's very convenient to turn it on and off with just a thumb. So there's the picture of it there. And they have a couple different ones too. There's another handle where it's just more of a squeeze action too. It has a kind of valve built into it. It is nice. This type is all one piece. And there's kinds like this one. Oops, right there. You'll see there's some threads there. And so you'd screw on the top of the wand onto the valve so you could replace it or whatnot, but that comes a weak point where it leaks. You got to keep putting new washers in there and things like that. I've had several that have had that type, and
Wow.
they always, and it can bend, get broken too. I've had to repair mine several times. Having to tap the aluminum back in there in the ring that rotates and things like that. So getting one that's all one piece like that is a good recommendation to prevent it. It'll have a good long life. And then as far as a good valve, this would be a good recommendation here. Let's see what I have in here. So this is the Dram valve. It's all made of, it has like I think a stainless steel ball in there. It's all polished and shiny. So it has nice smooth action, and also made of cast brass. So that's generally your brass fittings are going to last much longer than a plastic one would. Get that back in there. Yeah, just to be loosened up. You can pass that around and take a look there. You see it's quite heavy. And then, so this valve can also be put on the end of a watering wand. Or if you already have a watering wand, you can put one on the end there. And also if you have a long hose, that can be handy to have both on there. So you can have on the end of your hose, you could have that valve, and you could turn it off, unscrew something, go put something else on, or just use it for filling up a watering, like a watering can, or you could attach it to a sprinkler system or something like that. You can have one hose do multiple things. So if you have a valve like that, it allows you to swap things on and off, and you can double it up. So you could put your watering wand on the end, you turn that on, and then you can use this. So you'd have kind of a double valve. But when looking for valves, you want to look for something with the biggest hole that you can find. Generally, a lot of the low-cost brass ones have a very tiny little hole, and actually some of the plastic ones are going to actually give you better flow because they're usually a lot bigger around. They have a bigger hole in them sometimes. So there's a trade-off. Sometimes you want to just get a plastic one because they have better flow on them, such as this manifold. I have not. Dram kind of has a system for making one of these out of their valves, but you can't just buy a whole unit that has 4. So this is one by Ace, and they make a very good one. It's not eternal, but it'll last you maybe 5 years before it'll maybe get cracked or something.
Explain that to me.
Okay, water goes in here.
Well, what's that connected to?
So this would be, you can put a hose on that, on the end of the
Or not the
hose.
faucet, not the,
You could put it on a faucet too, and
Okay.
have multiple hoses, but you could also put this, you could take one hose all the way out to your garden area, put this on the end, and then you could have multiple sprinklers hooked up to
oh,
it.
I like that, I better take a picture.
So, and then you can turn them all off, and then you say, well, you want one sprinkler to run at a time because you don't have enough water pressure, or you can do 2 at a time. And so you could have a line coming off of these to your different sprinklers, or it could be a drip watering system you could put off the end of it. So these are probably like $10 or something.
It's
there.
also convenient for other things. So out at our back patio, we have one hooked up to the spigot, and I take a little short hose to a shower head, so you can have a hot or cold shower up, because I have hot and cold spigot outside.
Oh,
And I can also pull off of that, and I have a tub there, so you could do a cold plunge, so I can fill that tub and change the water, or I can hose the deck off by, without changing.
see, I
I
need a
can just
man.
plug into different manifolds of it. It's a very convenient thing to have.
But
Yeah.
once you
Yeah.
explain it, and you gotta have one now.
Well, because I don't have, they have those spigots that have a double nozzle, but I don't have one of those either, and so I thought, oh, there you go, that's what I can get.
So,
Well, there's a double.
Yep.
so anyway, I keep bumping it, and it's like, wait, I didn't want
Is
to.
that frost resistant,
So-
freeze resistant?
No, it's not. So you want to bring these nice valves. You want to bring them in the winter, as soon as in the fall when you're not using them. Put them in the house, because I've actually had one that was an expensive one. Not this type. This is actually a little stronger, but it was like a $30 valve that you'd use for a watering water system, something that's more commercial. Big old handle on it. And like it cracked, it split on the side. It got water left in there, and it expanded from the ice, and it split it open. And I used it in the spring. It's like, it's spraying out.
Wow.
So it's
So you can't cover it with a foam thing, one of those covers that you put on in winter?
you could, but it's much easier just to unscrew it, take it in the house, and then try to take something out there and try to cover it
How
up.
much do you value your investment?
I don't know. It's probably much better. So, Dram's solution to a manifold is to take 2 of their nice valves. This gets a little expensive, but is make your own manifold. So you put another valve on the end there, like in the photo there. And so then this would go on your faucet or the end of a hose, and then you get multiple ones. So then you'd get multiple of these T's. If you wanted 4 or 6 or so, you could get multiple of these Y's. These Y's are very nice for a faucet because they don't diminish at all the water flow. Well, maybe 10%, but it's, if you'll notice how big and open they are.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the cheaper ones will have little handles on them and then a little tiny hole in there. So this one has pretty much just open. It's 5/8 inch all the way through both sides. It splits it off. So you could even I use one on my well house. So I put a little hose on one end of it, and then the other hose goes out to the garden. So I have something to wash stuff off, or vegetables, or my boots, or whatever I need, a little short hose there. And I don't have to worry about the water flow going out to my garden being diminished. So that's those are about $11 or so. Everbuilt, Home Depot.
Do you ever buy anything used?
Yep. This was my thrift store find because these are like $30 or more, or something $35. They're not cheap.
Nice.
So I got it for a few dollars.
Nice.
And if you can find them, these little valves, almost impossible to find used. So if someone has them, they tend to hang on to them. So, and then let's see here. Anything else? And these little guys. So in order to make a bigger manifold, you could use a little stubby one, a little hose like this. And these should have brass on both sides. They're fairly big on the inside, so they don't diminish the flow. But for like on the end of here, diminish here, and I'll show here. So you'd screw this on the end here, and then you could put another one of these on the end here. So then you have 2 off of here. So that kind of spaces them out. So you're not having them all jammed real close and things interfere. So you can move the levers, and so this would be what you could use for that. So you can start out with something high quality.
So cool.
And I've gotten these from like plastic valves that just happen to come with them. So, because they're probably another $10 just for that. Let's see here. And that's that guy right there, 6-inch faucet kink protector.
Oh, back up, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
more photo takers, okay.
I'm learning.
You know that's copyrighted.
Yeah.
I'm learning from Travis.
There you go.
Okay, so then hoses. So this is my favorite hose. It's the Craftsman rubber hose, and there's other rubber hose. I've gotten one at Lowe's and it was horrible. It really kinked. It was kinked really terribly. A little thinner wall, and it was very hard to get it screwed in. It wasn't very good. Oh, also,
Where'd you get this one?
multiple locations. They actually have it in Sweet Home, at the Hoy's Hardware. They actually have Craftsman. I don't know.
Craftsman.
They used to have a Sears around in Albany. No more that I know of.
What is it called down in Sweet Home?
Hoy's
Hoy's.
Hardware, or it's the Ace Hardware.
How do you spell that?
H-O.
Hoys,
H-
apostrophe S.
Yeah.
It's someone's last name, and it's possessive. So they do carry Craftsman. I don't know if there's any other Sears stores in the area. Maybe Salem, Eugene, I don't know. Sears is harder and harder to find. You can also order them off of Amazon. So that's one way to not have to drive.
Craftsman. I can't remember who it is.
Isn't that Summit Gardening? Do they not sell
Oh,
right here in town?
they might, yeah. I haven't
think
been
they
in
have
there.
Craftsman.
Okay,
So,
so
they're spendy. I don't get too much.
What's
there.
the longest hose you have?
Yeah.
75 feet.
Is that as far as they go?
No,
before
they
the
go.
pressure starts
They
to-
go to 100. You can get 100 foot.
What if you gotta go farther than 100?
Then you put 6 together, or however.
Oh, really?
I tend to get the 50s because this is a 50 here, and they're manageable. They got quite a bit of weight, and so 75 you're kind of lugging. I mean, it's okay,
The
but
pressure
it's,
doesn't drop if you're going really far? Or?
yeah, it does a little
It
bit.
does.
Yeah. So the bigger hose, the better. 5/8 is kind of the standard, but if you really get big, you can get a 3/4 inch. and it's a little bit larger and you get less water droppage. They do come, but they commercial hoses and they get pretty expensive. You know, I don't know, $60 or more for a hose.
Buy those expandable hoses.
Those tend to be very small hole in them, so
Oh, they're easy to handle.
yeah.
Except, I have a 100-foot one, and it doesn't want to stretch until it has water in it.
I know.
So that's the only problem.
Yeah. So anyway, that's I run several of these. I think I like three 50-foots and another 75 on the end to get me all the way to the ends of my garden. So.
Wow.
But they last and they don't break down in the sun, and they don't get crispy and hard.
Cool.
This is an example of a non-rubber hose.
Oh,
It's very you can pass this one around. You can see this is what happens in the sun with the plastic hose after the years. So I've made these for my sprinkler system, little short ones because they're more flexible. Let's see here.
So plastic, rubber.
Yeah,
That's
it's
rubber.
actual rubber. So in the cold weather, these are not just slightly less flexible.
Got it.
Where a plastic hose, they really get hard to coil up and to maneuver around.
Is that hose heavier than this one?
Yeah, you can pass it around.
Oh,
You can feel the weight.
yeah. it's
But
not
you're
that
only
bad.
using these during the spring and summer, right? Maybe the fall.
Well, yeah, sometimes in the cold
Oh.
weather, you gotta manipulate them.
okay.
And then get
Oh.
a 100-foot one and try coiling it up and holding it while you're coiling it.
Yeah, that's the point. When you're coiling it and you have to hold it,
It's
your arm get
convenient.
by the time
Oh,
you
I
get to
have
the
one of those
end.
things. Coils it for me.
There you go.
That's good there.
Wow.
And then during the winter time, when you're not using it.
Real quick before you go, have you seen those ones that go up on a post and then it's encaged in a piece of in plastic and then it's retractable?
Yeah. I
What
haven't.
do you think about those?
Well, they only hold so much. It depends on if it works for you on the side of your house. It makes it neat and tidy. So yeah, they're great for if you have a
Do you
short
know what
run.
those are called?
I don't know the name. No, someone gave me a couple, and I don't know what they're called. The spools maybe, or hose spools, or you have to kind of describe them to.
Do you use yours?
I don't know. So if you want one. Like I said, I have 4 or 5 hoses that I all hooked together that are all 50 foot or 75, and
Gotcha.
they only handle maybe 50 feet before they run out. So which is fine. So when you get done for the year, you want to get all the water out, and hopefully I got all the water out of this one. I hear hearing things, so so when you coil it, when it's all
I forgot to do that this winter.
What? Take your
There's
hose out?
water. There's water in all my hoses.
okay. So when you're coiling it up, and also it's good to put it at alternating. Let's just coil the hose here, do the demonstration here. Hopefully I won't lose any water in
So
here.
that one doesn't stay coiled, meaning like some of these other ones we get, and they are hard to stretch out unless they're warm.
Yeah,
So this one doesn't do that?
this is fairly flexible.
Yeah, it's
Anytime, yeah, it depends on. It doesn't even have to be super warm.
Cool.
Okay, so you want
Does it
to.
last a long time?
Yeah, these will last 20 years or more.
Oh,
And they have good brass fittings on the end here, so you can even run over it with your car, and they're nice and hard. They're very thick, so it's not going to get destroyed unless you really, put a very heavy vehicle on cement and you run over it 6 times, maybe. But even that, they're very strong. So you want to lift it up. Water runs down to the other end of the hose, and you'll start seeing good stuff coming out. And then you want to start coiling it. So it's kind of under, and now you can do this with wire too, but so you're kind of bringing it up the other way. So it's coming out underneath. It's like little hitches if you ever done rope. So we're coiling it one way, and we're coiling it the other way. So
Oh,
this
that is
prevents
okay
all
to
the
do
little,
that.
it gets all, what do I want to say? So it's
Tangled up.
tangled up, yeah. So if you just do it like one way all the time, you have to keep turning it.
Right.
And then guess what? You get this, and you're just like, ugh, how do I get rid of this stupid thing? And then you have to spin it around and fight with it the whole
I
time.
know, right? I learned how to
So we do
I
one
never
way,
did that either.
normal coil, and then we do a back coil.
Always try.
And this just takes practice.
It's a pain.
You're not going to get it probably the first time.
You're
and
so
this-
good at
I think a lot of practice.
that. Yeah.
So I do this with microphone cables and all kinds of stuff. So that's how I learned it.
No
So
kidding.
you just,
Nice.
but it keeps the. It's not perfect, so you're always going to have a little bit of tangle, but it prevents it kind of back and forth. Do this. Oh. There was some water. Well, cleanup crew later here. Let's see. Let's put this in the watering can here.
This is gardening.
It's a little messy.
It's part of the class.
Okay. Okay, so then you have it. So
And the animals don't mess with the hoses?
haven't so far. You don't get mice on there chewing them on. So if they're left over the winter, maybe they would. So then I've made a little string. You could do this with a rope or something like that, so it doesn't get too thin and it's hard to work with. So then I put it around. One loop goes in the other, doesn't matter which. And then this goes up on a nail.
You are
You
so
lift it up
clever.
there on your wall, and then it's up out of the way in your shed or wherever you
Well, you
can,
need
your
to come to my
garage.
house.
So these are very easy to make. Just so if you were ever going to Pathfinders, this would be a
We got a whole box of
Bolin.
those.
Remember what it's called? The kind where it doesn't collapse on you.
Yeah.
Bolin, I think it is.
So, yeah.
So
Bowen?
bowl, B-O-W-L. I don't know. Do you have any idea?
B-O-W-L-A-N-E, I
Something,
think.
yeah.
Bowline.
Bo- But yeah, bowl line or
Yeah,
something
bowl
like
line.
that.
If you'd have joined Pathfinders instead of Adventures, you would have learned this.
Kind of hard to
Thank you. Just listen.
demonstrate.
She'll be there next year.
Let's see here. So it's a
And you know, my
one
son-
little loop.
Move on, pay attention.
Well, I am, but I have to say that.
Stick it up through, around and back through. So if you want to know how to do it, come to Pathfinders.
You're in Pathfinders then?
Yep.
Very
Wow.
So then we have a loop that doesn't collapse. It's not a slip knot. So it's always going to be there open that you can pass something through. So that is,
That is so
I can show you individually if you want to at the end or something. But anyway, that's very helpful. Let's see here. Go through this. Okay, so if you want serious flow, you need a serious valve. So a lot of water systems are PVC in different well houses or different places. If you're in the city, you're kind of limited, but you want to find the biggest valve. Generally on the side of the house, the valves on there are called, what they call it, I just had it earlier. There's a name for them. But anyway, it's the valves that have a little spigot. Those tend to have very small little holes in them. Some of them are going to be better than others. And sometimes you have good enough water pressure in the city anyway to overcome that deficiency. But if you need, big flow, these are about, I think, 1.25 inches. And so I have one of these inside my shed where the water pressure tank is, and it comes directly out. And so I go in there, turn off the valve, and it just comes out as a straight pipe to the outside. So there's no valve. And then I put one of those Ys on there, or I can just put a hose directly on there. So this is a hose fitting on there, so it allows you to get a little more flow. But that's it only if you have your own water system, like your own well or something like that, would this probably be useful. And then there's two types of threads. You need to pay attention to this, because when you go to look for adapters or fittings or different parts for a watering system, you need to pay attention to these two different types. So we got garden hose thread and national pipe thread. And so this one actually has both. This is an adapter. So this would be the national pipe thread. Generally the little threads are closer together on national pipe thread, and then the garden hose threads are a little bit wider apart. And this is always going to be 3/4 inch for garden hose thread, where the other could be varying amounts. 3/4, 1/2 inch. So let's see here, sprinkler, sprinklers here. So on a sprinkler, generally they're 1/2 inch national pipe thread type, not garden hose thread on these. So there's an adapter there up close, so you can kind of see garden hose, national pipe thread. And then if you want to do some sprinklers, so this is the best one I found, Rainbird. They also have plastic ones too. Depends on what your budget can afford. These are around $6.75 or $7, Home Depot. They're not bad, but they're not indestructible either, and they will deteriorate in the sun over years and get brittle. So they won't last forever, but they're a good starter if you have a limited budget. But if you do have a little extra money, these I think are like 26 or 28, somewhere in that range. So these are pretty much for the rest of your life if you take care of them, not, get them stuck in the mud or packed full of mud or get plugged up or something like that. One note, if you have slugs and you have your sprinkler system and you have a manifold, check to make sure there aren't any slugs crawling inside your manifold. If you undo the hose and you leave it and your manifold just open, sometimes slugs will crawl in there, and you put in your hose and you turn on the water and it goes and it all plugs up, and so you have little slug pieces that go all the way down your watering system and plug up one of these. It's happened twice.
Oh, no.
It's the most gross, nasty thing that you've ever seen, is to take a little wire and try to get little pieces of slug out of your sprinkler system. So be very careful not to leave them open and where things could crawl in. Anyway, these will have 2 positions. These are adjustable on here. And so they set the position so they can go, these can go I think 360 if you flip, well, maybe not. Maybe these aren't 360. But generally you don't want 360 because you're going to get wet, or you got to stick in the middle of your garden. It's a little bit of a challenge to work around them. So generally you want to put them at the corners, and if it's big enough, then you want one in the middle. And then you also want to have them opposing. So you could say, well, I want to have one go this way, so this is the corner of my garden, the other end's over there. Well, it mostly reaches the other end. And it's like, well, that's good enough. Well, no, it's not. You need to have one on either end, pointed at each other. And so in order to get even watering, because generally real close to it isn't going to get much water, and then where the end of the water flow hits, that's kind of where it gets the most water, and then everywhere in between is kind of halfway. And so to have them opposing, you get fairly good even watering. So generally each corner is a good recommendation for where to put your sprinklers.
Okay, so that's attached to a hose.
So yeah, it gets a little
And then
complicated.
what's it attached
So
to?
this would be kind of what it, so generally it's national pipe thread that you're dealing with. So you can actually take a garden hose, put a stake, wooden stake or something like that in the ground, run the hose up there, strap it around there with some zip ties or something like that, and get an adapter from garden hose thread to 1/2 inch national pipe thread.
Huh.
You screw that on the end of your hose, and then you can screw your sprinkler in there, and that gets it up. They have little things that are designed for that purpose, but generally, so this is garden hose thread on both ends, so you can daisy chain them together, and you stick it in the ground, and you see the height that you get off of that. Not very good. Now you could stick in a little piece like that, that's 1/2 inch, and you could go up from one of these. So that would be another option too. Stick your hose in here, and then run a riser is what they're called. A little gray pipe that you can get at a irrigation supply store or Home Depot, 1/2 inch, and goes all the way up, and then you can have an adapter at the end to put in your sprinkler system. So that would be one way you could use this, or save the money and just put a stake in the ground and strap a hose to it. So however you want to do it. This would give a little bit more modularity. We could unscrew stuff, take it all apart if need be. So that's kind of what that is. And one way to, if you have a lot of big area you want to run pipe to, hoses can get expensive, so you can use poly pipe. So this is 1/2-inch poly pipe, a little chunk of it here. It's fairly flexible, and so allows you to do bends in it. Well, not real tight, but you know, a sweeping bend. Make a right corner and go down, and you can put little stakes in there to kind of control it. It's, you know, likes to spring back, but you can definitely bend it, and that's quite inexpensive. And generally, you want to try to go as big as possible. So 3/4 inch is a good diameter to get for poly pipe to run to your different sprinklers, and then you can get some adapters that would screw. I think they're like blue or something like that. They like screw into the end of the pipe, and you can. I just run mine up on a 2x4 stake that I put in the ground. That I can run it up, strap it to that, and then have my little fittings for my sprinkler on there. So that's something you can do. So the 1/2-inch is going to cut down your water flow significantly, even though it's like half the price of the 3/4. But I think it's only like $20 for maybe $30 for a 100-foot spool of the poly pipe. So it's pretty. If you want to go 100 feet, that's much more economical than a hose, which is probably be, I don't know, $70 or something like that for 2 hoses or something like that, or a 100-foot hose. It all depends on where you get it and the quality. So, but that stuff is black. So black plastic is good to know. When you get like anything that has black, generally has a lot of high carbon in there, and it's sun resistant, so it's not going to break down in the sun like something that was, oh, I don't know, blue or something like that, or white. Like it was white pipe is going to break down the fastest. And same thing for plastic too. The transparent plastic, like you'd use on a greenhouse, that isn't been treated, it's going to break down in the sun and start breaking up and get crumbly. Where the black plastic will pretty much be eternal. It'll all stretch and be malleable for the rest of your life. So that's something to think about when you're looking at different plastics, because we have things like watering cans that have white plastic on them. So if you leave this out in the sun, it's going to break down and get crisp and get cracked very easily. So you need watering cans tend to be things that you don't want to leave out in the sun. You want to find a tree or some little shaded area where you can stash them. Another watering option would be a watering can. So this also is very good for fertilizing your ground or adding minerals in different amendments, because you can do your mix of water and minerals and other things in there.
Wow.
And then stick your little sprinkler head on there, and you can go around and go down your row and distribute stuff. So a little called a drench. So this has been highly modified on the top here because it had a little tiny hole. Let's see, I don't remember. I think it was from the back, maybe, I don't know, like 3 or 4 inches. And that's really annoying to have to try to, to fill and then have this little tiny hole and try to dump stuff in and then stick the hose, get it in a weird angle. So I just took a pocket knife and made a nice big opening. You don't want to get too close to here because it takes away the support. It makes it a little bit structurally unstable if you get too much, but definitely you can make it a nice big hole. That helps out a lot. And this particular one, the Bloom one from Wilco, it was fairly inexpensive, like $16 or $17. The metal ones, I don't recommend them. They look nice and you think, oh, metal, that would last a long time. Well, after about 2 years, they get corroded, especially depends on what you're putting into them. If you do different minerals in there, that sometimes you get salts. They have salts in them and they really start to rust fast. And I've had several of them that I've destroyed. I'm like, okay, no more metal.
Wow.
Plastic is much more durable. It can handle any kind of, fertilizers you stick in there, and it isn't going to corrode. So that's what I found. Just get the plastic ones. You get a couple in your lifetime. My dad still has the one he bought when I was little, like 45 years ago, because he always put it under a bucket or something to cover it up. It was those old green ones. I don't know if you with it. Had like a flower decoration on the side. They're fairly heavy duty, but he always kept it out of the sun. He told me, don't ever leave that out in the sun because it'll start to break down and get crispy and crack. And he's kept it all those many years because he's always protected it from the sun. So, all right, so finish up here. There's our poly pipe there, picture of it in a roll there. So it's squishy a little bit. It's what they used to use for homes as a watering, because that was kind of popular back in the 70s. And then they realized it got little pinholes very easily and little cracks in there after many years. But it's low cost. Drip tape system, so instead of sprinklers you could go with drip tape. So this would be the drip tape. It has little water emitters every so often, like 6 to 12 inches. And so you run that along your plants in your bed there. And then you'd use poly pipe too. This is kind of a kit, everything that you'd get in there. So there's little end caps that you put on the end of the poly pipe, and there's a water regulator so it doesn't have too much pressure, so you blow out the pipe and break it if you get too much pressure. And there's little hooks to nail down both the drip tape so it doesn't like move out of the way and get all tangled up and out of a line. You want to kind of tack it down. And then these are, I think, I'm not sure what those are exactly. They go on the end, and I know those. See, I think that's for like garden hose thread or some kind of threading system. I think is on the bottom of those, and then the pipe would go over the end there. And these are valves that you put on. So you do kind of like make your manifold. It's basically multiple strips going down. You have a big pipe, like a 3/4 inch, going down the length of your garden, and then you have little valves that you put on there. I think that's, I can't remember exactly how that works. I have never really used them, but there's a way to put little holes in your main pipe, and maybe put one of these in there. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, there's a way to inject or snap in more pipes, and then you'd have a valve usually on each one, so you can turn on the valve, so a couple beds, then it runs the water to the end, and then they usually blocked off at the end. And then you can basically emits water all the way along there fairly evenly.
And you can choose which rows have more water or less water.
Yeah, so you can, and a lot of times, so that's the other topic here.
Is this what you recommend for watering?
I don't know. It depends. So for some gardens, it would be really useful to have a drip gardening, but it's also going to that gets in the way every time you want to hoe or weed. There are always these drip lines, especially with the hoe. You can nick them pretty easily. So, and they're always in the way, and every year you kind of have to move them and clean them out, or if you want to till or you want to do something, you got to pull them all the stakes out, and you got to roll them all up. So it's a lot of work. So putting them out and also taking them back in and protecting them and things like that. Water timers, good and bad. So the bad is little tiny holes. So that means your water pressure is going to go down. Sometimes that can be a problem, sometimes it isn't. And they're not terribly reliable. Melnor ones are the lower cost ones. They tend to fail after about 3 years or sometimes 2. This is a little bit better one. Had one that had 2 in there. Yeah, it kind of died after a couple of years. They don't last terribly long time, especially if they get in the sun or something like that. They seem to break a little sooner. The Orbit ones, I think I actually have a slide for this. There we go. The Orbit ones are a little bit better, and actually having a single one can actually be helpful. Much more easy to set the time inside for each channel that you're going out, or each sprinkler. You can have a time on there. I found, and I didn't bring my manifold, but the plastic one that I had here, I've stopped actually using these because I got tired of having to deal with, oh well, today I got to go adjust it because I don't need the water on today, or I just walk out there and say, oh yeah, it looks like it needs some water. Turn a few valves on, set a timer on my watch, and it goes off, or on your phone. And then I just set it for an hour and then come back. It gives me a chance to get some exercise. Oh, my alarm goes off, run out to the garden turn the valve off, turn the next one, and run back in. So that
If
was,
you're really busy and you only check your garden once a week. That was a lifesaver for me
Yeah.
to have
Same
that.
here.
so it can be helpful, but
Cause I have one similar to that and it was amazing.
yeah, but they don't last for terribly long. But the Orbit ones are better. They will last a little longer. And I've got some, and I just finally gave up on the whole timer idea because it was always coming on at the wrong time, and I'd run out there and turn it off, or I'd have the valve off on there so it would click on, but it wouldn't have water or something like that. And I just, oh, this is such a pain. I just do it manually, and so that's personal preference. That's kind of what I've gone to, just having my manifold out there, just turn on, because I don't have daisy chain a few of them together. Well, I need more than 4, so I put a little hose from one to the next manifold, and I have another 4.
Oh, goodness.
So that gets kind of chaotic when you're trying to program these things. It takes quite a while to program them, and so when you got multiple ones, and space them out, get the start time and end time and the run time, and like, oh, I can just go out there and turn it on. Now, if you're gone, yes, they can be very helpful when you're gone for maybe a week or something, on vacation or visiting someone, and then it's nice to be able to have some kind of automated system. So having a backup of some timers that you can know how to use and get set up. But again, it's kind of personal preference. I'll finish up here. And then, so this is a little bit different topic, but so we talked about on the leaves how the minerals can be absorbed through the leaves. So actually, scratch that. This is soil. So we're applying this to the soil rather than to the leaves. And so it's recommended to do it in the fall because you get the most amount of benefit. But this is something you can do all winter long to prepare your soil for spring. So it's basically encouraging the bacteria and the fungus to make the minerals that are in the soil that are unavailable to the plant into a form that is available to them. They're kind of like building up the stores of available minerals that when the plants, you put them in the ground, it's all right there, and they do really well.
And that's molasses?
Molasses, yes. So
Do you know molasses?
not,
Oh my.
so what was there's a type of molasses that's been boiled several times, and it's kind of bitter. Blackstrap.
Blackstrap.
It's expensive, and it's also not the best for gardening. So don't buy the blackstrap stuff. So Wilco, the local supplier of most things, farm related. So Beaver brand, I think, is what they have now. So this is 3 gallons. It looks like it should be 4 or 5, but it's square, so you don't get very much in a bucket. But anyway, I think they're around $23 for a big bucket like this.
And what is it called? Sorry.
Just molasses.
Just molasses.
What is molasses? Is that like a...
Beaver brand.
Corn, sugar cane that has been boiled, and they extract all the sugar crystals off there as white sugar. And what's left is everything so this is the full of minerals. So they've refined it. This is the wheat bran and the wheat germ, basically, when you have flour, when they take all that out. Well, this is what they've taken out, and they give you the white sugar. They sell that. And so this has all the good stuff in here, all the healthy stuff.
So what do? You just pour it on the ground?
Nope.
Oh.
So the recipe here is on the next screen.
Ah,
So here's your recipe. So that's where the watering can comes in handy. Then you get your little measuring spoons out there from the kitchen. You just remember to return them nicely cleaned. Otherwise, you're just like, where did that go?
Lasts a long time. If you're only putting in 2.
Yeah, but you can use quite a bit over. I use about maybe half a gallon over a growing season.
Oh.
So yeah, and you can use it several times. And whenever the plants are looking a little sick or not doing too well, you can do that in a foliar spray. You spray the leaves with it too. So then, you basically dump all that in there. Generally, you put your stuff in first, and then you take the hose and just really, nice, fast, brisk water, and that does the mixing for you. And then you can use a paint stirrer or a random stick, but a paint stirrer has flat surfaces and works really well to stir it in there, get it all stirred up. Oh, it's going to break. Yeah, you probably see some stuff on there. You don't know what it is, right?
Yep.
eBay or Amazon
Nice.
tends to be the. So the molasses, like I mentioned, that's heavy. So you're going to pay a lot to ship it. So Wilco, I think they still have the buckets. So that's kind of your lifetime supply. And if you have like a gallon or something jug, even like an oil jug, you could pour that into the oil jug, or if you have a molasses jug or something like that, a 1 gallon, use that because it's much easier to pour out of a jug. This thing is a pain. It's a sticky mess. And so you want to use a funnel and try
So how
to
many
fill up the
times
jug.
am I gonna do this?
Usually just once in the fall.
Well, why can't I just go to the store and buy a jar?
You could, yeah.
Oh.
It's just going to be a lot more expensive per, a unit of measure per cup. Basically, it's going to be a lot more
So you could
expensive.
do it throughout
It
the
depends
summer
on how many
also.
hundred square feet.
Yeah, I've gone through several
Yeah,
gallons
it's
already.
I don't know that
So,
much.
but if you just have a small, then yeah, you could just buy the quart or something like
So
that.
can you do that now, this
Yeah,
time of year?
yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
Anytime you want to, as soon as possible. Obviously, at this point it's late into the winter, but the sooner, basically in the fall is the best time. You're going to get the most benefit because the bacteria is going to be able to work the longest, but they'll still be able to get benefit from it doing it now. Salt. So this is a general term, so don't just do table salt. That's not going to be helpful at all. So the previous slide gives a little more definitions of that. So a high mineral salt, Celtic salt too is good too. So official, they want sea solids, something where they taken seawater and evaporated the water, and you get all these salt out of there. It has all the minerals in there with it. That's probably the best, but it's also very hard to get a hold of, or almost impossible to get a hold of. They have some places down in California where you can buy a 50-pound bag, but then you're paying maybe $50 to ship it. And it's going to be at least $50 probably for the bag.
Or you just go
Or
out
maybe
to the
$90, so
coast and get some water and dehydrate it, right?
if you want to do that, you're welcome to do that. Have at it. Himalayan salt is about the cheapest option we have, and you can find large 10-pound bags on Amazon. I've looked on eBay, it's not as cheap there. So you keep looking for it, and you want the smallest granules you can get. Yeah, pink Himalayan salt. So that has a mostly full range of minerals. And that's good because you don't have to buy them individually. And then seaweed. So used to be able to get dried kelp in the 50-pound bag at Wilco. No more. You can now get a 3-pound bag if you want it.
Oh, goodness.
And for $20, you can buy that 1 little pound. Now that may be fine, for a lot of you. So that would be an option. And garden stores usually have kelp, dried kelp or something like that.
Where do you buy it?
I bought one, but I bought a 50-pound bag back in the day, I don't know, 10 years ago at Wilco, and they had it. It was around $75 for that 50-pound bag. So
Wow.
it's not very much per pound. And I've used it all up and never haven't got around to getting any more. It's very beneficial.
Can you buy it at an Asian market?
If it's food grade, it's going to be terribly expensive per pound. So yeah, any garden store would have it, but there's a place on eBay, Kelp for Less, that has it available. I think I did. I don't remember if I ordered it or not, but it was like 43. Let's see, it ended up to being like $63 for 25 pounds. A lot more than I paid the first time, but it's cheaper per
It's
pound.
probably gonna be more now.
Yeah, you get the smaller quantities. You can buy a 3-pound bag off of eBay too. They have all kinds of sizes, but as soon as you go down, mine was like $2.50 a pound, and then it goes up to $5 a pound and $7 a pound. Depends on how
So
small.
it's kelp for less on what?
On eBay,
On eBay?
yeah,
Okay.
they have it available there, and they have all kinds of stuff
This
too.
is a little off topic, but our bodies need minerals,
Right.
right? So do you put like Celtic salt in your water, your drinking water? I heard someone say
Not
to do
water,
that,
but I use it on my food.
which is the same thing as consuming.
Yeah, so
Salt.
you can benefit it from directly as well. And a lot of these things, even seaweed, that's edible. You can get the edible or food grade, because sometimes the stuff for agriculture is contaminated with, you know, bacteria or something in there. They didn't take care of it as well as, you know, they do the food grade. It hasn't been certified or scanned and make sure that it doesn't have any bad stuff in there. But
Like you said,
seaweed's
that's
good.
different than table salt, right?
Right,
Well,
because that's just,
Table salt has the iodine, and that's what we need.
yeah, well, you can also just get iodine too as a
Well, you
supplement.
can,
Um,
but it's easier to.
But there's so many more minerals in the pink salt, you know, and stuff.
It's a trade-off, so yeah,
It's a trade-off, it depends on if you're low on
yeah, but you can,
thyroid,
it's
low on
it's
iodine.
real easy to just do a supplement of iodine in liquid form. Low-Gil's solution or something like that, 3%, and it's very easy to take, just a drop in your water or juice or something like that, or put it on your skin, and if your body needs it, it'll absorb it. If it doesn't, it'll just leave it there.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a
Yeah.
fun test.
So you can see if you're low on iodine by putting a little smear of it on your skin and then waiting to see if it'll go away or not. Usually you do it
What happened?
on your arm or someplace where you're not going to see it because it does stain a little bit, or not stain, but it has that yellowish look to it, and you know, you may want to put it on the back of your leg or something where you're not going
Wow.
to, you know, people see it everywhere and wonder why you have a blotch of yellow on the back of your hand or something like that. So,
Wow.
and
Well, the
then
last two things.
yeah, fish hydrolysate. So kelp for less. It's about the only place I found on eBay to get it. I called Wilco. Nah, they don't have it. It's different than fish emulsion. Fish emulsion tends to be they boil the fish and they get all the nice expensive oils off there, and they remove all those oils and they get other components off of there. And all that heating up process destroys a lot of the beneficial aspects of it to the plants. And so fish hydrolysate is a form where they take the whole fish, grind it all up to a smooth liquid, and they put it in a bottle, and that's done with a cold press basically, or a cold process. They're not heating it, boiling it, and cooking it in process. So that's,
Can you do your own?
I suppose. The bones would be a little challenging, but so if you debone it,
Yeah.
you could blend it up, I guess. But it's not terribly expensive, and you can get it in like a gallon jug or so. You don't need a lot. And then Linterdite, most people haven't a clue what it is. I didn't know what it was till a couple years ago. It's a form of, actually, and they find it in the coal fields. And it's kind of a soft, dark brown, kind of blackish substance that they find on like the top layer of a coal bed. So it came originally from plants, but it's high in humic acid and fulvic acid, and those are very beneficial to plants. And it also is something that almost every time you do a foliar spray, you want to add that in because it's a chelator. And a chelator changes the form. It puts the mineral in a reduced form that the plant can absorb on the leaves. If it's oxidized, which these sulfates, ammonium sulfate or iron sulfate, they're all in these oxidized forms that they come in. They're kind of shelf stable that way. But those aren't, the plant can't really access them. You spray them on your plant, it isn't really gonna say, can't do anything with this, it's the wrong form. Unless the biology on the leaf maybe could transform it over time, but it's not very efficient. It doesn't absorb it very well, so you're getting a very small response if you do it without the Linterdite. And eBay again, get a bag of it. You don't need a lot. It goes pretty far, but I've already gone through one 10-pound bag, I think, or a 5-pound bag already for my garden.
Do
But
you do
anyway,
this just one time a year?
generally just put it on one time. Yeah, you could do it several times, I suppose, but so the main thing is the molasses. It's going to bacteria love sugar, and that's what they normally eat from plants. So you're kind of saying, here, I'm a plant. I'm providing some minerals for them to eat too. They need minerals too for their bodies, so that helps them out. And then molasses is kind of a lot of the sugar, the carbohydrates that they need to build their bodies with. And so they enjoy that, and
And
then
who enjoys it?
the bacteria
Oh,
and the
okay.
fungus. I think the fungus will also.
Worms or what?
Feeding your bacteria.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm just
Um,
kidding.
So anyway, so that's they recommend there's lots of different things, different formulations that you can use for foliar sprays later on in the season. I'll kind of cover some of the other ones, but anyway, just wanted to see. I think that's the last slide there. So, so this 1 gallon covers about 100 square feet. That's the application rate, as you want to. It's called in farming. How much per acre? Well, this is kind of broken down for how much you need. For a small garden plot, 100 square feet, you can halve it, quarter it as needed, just like you do a recipe. So anyway.
We could call you and buy some for you. Or-
Yeah, so some of the stuff like Glenardite, or you could, buy from me, or just I'll give you some. So that's it's mostly a powder, but not completely, and so it has these little chunks in there that plug up. You get all these little black things, and they'll plug up holes like that, and it's like, and you have to back flush it, and it's kind of annoying. So if you blend it up in some water, get high-speed blender and high for I don't know 30 seconds or a minute, it'll kind of emulsify it and break up all those little particles for the most part. And also the water it'll start to break down. The water soften up a little bit. So anyway, so that's pretty much all I have. Questions at all, or?
So if I wanted to, I gotta cut. We got some land, but it's all grown and shrubby, so I gotta clear that out.
Yep.
Now I do know, I think it's poison oak
Oh,
grows on my property.
Okay.
Is that bad for the garden?
Bad for you.
It's bad for animals and you.
Yeah.
Not bad for the garden necessarily,
Okay.
unless it's invasive. And
So when I cut everything, do I gotta go deeper and like start?
yeah, generally it's been compacted over the years, and so you want to either
Can you
do a
burn it?
first till of it to loosen it all up. Also gets rid of a lot of the weed seeds that have accumulated on the surface. You kind of bury them deep and lessen your weed.
So I gotta
amount of
decide
weeds in there.
where my garden's gonna be,
Yeah.
and then just start digging in that.
Well, you can find some like wooden stakes and kind of plan it out, put them out there, and kind of get a measuring tape. And a lot of times these hardware store, they have like 200-foot measuring tapes that are kind of flexible. Those are really nice for gardening. You can measure stuff out and lay them along your row, and you can say, well, every 6 inches you can plant something, or every foot you can do something. And also they're good for measuring out, the perimeter of things and new garden spaces, and very helpful.
So what's that tool I would use to start?
A Maddox,
Is that what that
generally,
is?
or a pick.
Okay.
A Maddox and a pick, they can get them together. Those are very helpful they have a little blade about this wide, and they're very good for getting into sod. But actually, like a shovel is probably the best to start a garden with, because you really want to bury everything that's growing on the top. You want to flip it completely over.
why wouldn't he, after he cleans that out, why wouldn't he just rototill?
You could, yeah, but not everyone has a rototiller, or
That's true.
you don't want to
Rototill?
necessarily rent. Yeah.
Is that like a machine?
Yeah.
But I thought you said we weren't supposed to do that.
Well, you don't do it, a
You
couple
do it
times a
for-
year would be bad. But it's not, initially it's very helpful to get rid of the weeds. And
Especially when he's preparing.
yeah, when you have a new area or something that's been abandoned for a few years, it's fine to till. They recover, but generally if you till and then you plant, generally the fungus that is beneficial will not reconnect and grow, and it'll all kind of be torn up, and the biology will not appreciate it for a while. It'll take maybe 3 or 4 months before it starts to get back to normal again, and then by then your growing season's pretty much over. And so generally I've done it and tilled in all this compost and good stuff and minerals, and it's like, I didn't do as well as the soil I just left alone, because there's so much disturbance. Even though it's nice and fluffy and nice, and you think, oh, that looks so nice. You can grow my carrots or potatoes in there. I did potatoes last year, and it's like, I'll till. Looks like sometimes you need to periodically. I till in rock dust. That's basalt from the rock quarry, and that's a good source of minerals. And it also changes the physical structure of the soil, so it's more like a loam instead of a heavy clay. And so that's
Where do you get that?
rock quarries.
So they just sell it to the individual?
Yeah, or Liberty, or you can have them delivered or something like that. Generally, it's if you ask nicely, you can go up there and collect it for free. But you have to do the heavy lifting of shoveling into bags and lifting these extremely heavy bags into your vehicle. It's possible. I've done it for a couple times, and then I said, I'll just pay them to, why don't you give me a load of it and I'll pay you for the load. So they dumped a big pile on my property, and so, but that's nice. Yeah, you do have to screen it though, because it's got bigger chunks in there you don't necessarily want. It's sometimes they pre-screened it 1 year, and then last time I got it, no, it wasn't pre-screened, so I have to sit there and screen it out. You can also buy it in 50-pound bags, azomite and some other rock dust you can get. What other ones here? Granite. No, is it granite? Yeah, I think it's granite. You can also get rock dust if you look. It's kind of variable to where you live. In some communities, the farm stores there's no one buying it, no one interested in it that knows about it, so they don't sell it. So Wilco is a good choice, but a lot of times I don't think they have it at all. So a lot of times that's when I would till in there, when I sprinkle it fairly heavily on there and till it in, and then it mixes it all up and changes the structure, and then I let it set, and it'll be good. But I've learned tilling in compost is usually counterproductive. All that air, they just eat up the bacteria, just chew all that up, and then the soil's hard again, usually harder than when you started, before you added it. And so adding compost to the surface is very beneficial. You get the protection of the soil, which is, we want to protect the soil as much as possible, disturb it as little as possible, and keep it moist. So in watering, I think I forgot to mention that biology likes moist soil. Just think of where does mold grow? Moist environments that are usually kind of warm, moist environments. Well, biology likes that too. So if it gets dried out, it'll all go dormant. A lot of the bacteria will go dormant, and it'll take a while for them to reestablish. And a lot of times they'll die off too. If they're close to too much solar exposure, it'll kind of sterilize the soil. The sun will, because it has UV rays hitting the surface, and so it'll kill off a lot of the biology on the surface. So if you keep it covered with compost or leaves or something like that, then that can be very beneficial.
Bark mulch.
It's very, so on a tree, the parts of the plant that have the most minerals are the twigs and the leaves, and then it gets less and less. The main trunk of the tree has the least amount of minerals, and the bark has like the least. So bark mulch is usually not, plants don't appreciate it very much. It's kind of a covering, but it doesn't feed them at all. But it can be helpful, as long as you can pull it back and put some good compost underneath there, and then rake it back over the top, especially around shrubs, your ornamental shrubs. Pull it back, add some good stuff, and recover it, because the bark mulch itself, it's got a little bit, but it isn't really feeding the plants like it needs, and usually they're not doing well, they're not well fed, there's lacking. The biology isn't good, or so there's a lot of biology in compost that you kind of inoculate your soil with and bring in a lot of beneficial stuff, start the colonies going, and you give them a food source too. The organic matter is the food source for biology, so you want that continually adding. But the worms and everybody else, they know in nature leaves fall during the fall, and everything kind of breaks it down over the winter time, and in the springtime it's breaking down. And it's nature knows how to pull it into the soil. And you start digging in a forest, and you're like, woo, this is nice soil. It's loose and a little granular and beautiful stuff. But you put that in your garden, a year later, it looks like, ugh, this is all hard and chunky and kind of nasty, because you've now removed it from its environment where there's organic matter falling on it every year and replenishing it. And you also is adding air, which encourages the biology to eat it all up real quick. And so they eat up all that organic matter and becomes hard, clumpy, and not something that plants can grow in very easily.
Wow.
So, anyway, getting late here, but good information, I think, that should help
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Very good.
What's the next topic gonna be?
Let's find out here. Preview here. Okay. Rewind. Okay, what's next?
Minerals.
Minerals. Okay, so we'll cover minerals and what minerals plants need and what major ones that we can help them out with.
Yeah, and can you put that on the phone chain?
Yes,
again,
that was so
Yeah.
That was really helpful.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'll do that.
So we don't forget, it's every other week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So let's see. Find out what the date for next time.
hard to remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. Calendar. February. So
Be the
today's the
19th.
5th. It'd be the 19th.
All right.
So the 19th will be the next one. If you want to put it on your calendar and with a reminder notification.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Once you get all your notes taken, we'll have a closing prayer.
Yep.
See if there's anything else I forgot here. Any other props? I don't think I showed you guys all my props here. So, all right. So, word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for your goodness and your mercy towards us and your forgiveness. And even when we make mistakes, even in our gardening, you forgive us and the soil forgives us. And plants will come back even though we've maybe done something to them to hurt them. And just pray that you will help us learn and grow in a knowledge of your natural world to help us understand the spiritual principles. Help us to look for those spiritual principles in everything we do. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.